Hello everyone, this is Mike Levin on February 11th, Thursday, 2021. And this is my cat Charlie. Say hello, Charlie. Hello, Charlie. So today I will be telling you the story of Python on the Windows 10 platform as of this date. And this is a freshly, purchased laptop. So I'm just settling into it. I know you see the old Windows logo in black and white back there, which people don't see much anymore with the new look, the new flatter, more colorful looks that Microsoft is pushing out. But do not let that bother you. Today, we are going to be talking about really the three good paths to Python on Windows 10 in early 2021. And the real subject of this video is the first path, which is the easiest, and it turns out to be the most official. But worst, ironically, the worst for the beginner. Well, technically, it's not the worst for the beginner. Under the Windows subsystem for Linux would be the worst, but difficult for the beginner. Number two is the best for the beginner, but, not official. And big download. And that's Anaconda. This first way, by the way, is going to be through the commands prompt and Microsoft Store. It's a very good story getting Python going on Windows. Initially, it looks like magic, what I'm about to show you. However, it's got a whopping big downside when it's compared to alternatives like Anaconda that installs so much other stuff and allows Python to run in the web browser and gives context and an editor and a whole bunch of other stuff, that this first approach kind of leaves you high and dry. But what they expect you to do is to install VS Code and to run your Python by opening a command line, typing Python, and then the file name .exe, or from VS Code, as in the IDE context. It's a very Microsoft way of doing it. The third way is the best overall, and that is official, although it's from a repo, but you can always get the latest. And it is on Linux, best overall on Linux. And it's technically going to be on the Windows subsystem for Linux, or WSL. And I'll throw in a 2 there because it's been updated to a significantly different kind of version, better. And we're going to stick to that. And that's going to be a future video. This is going to be an important video coming up because the whole personality of the machine transforms as soon as you have WSL on it. And what I'm showing you right now is a pretty purely Windows experience, albeit very stripped down, trying to make it look like a generic operating system, that it would look identical whether I was on a Mac or a Linux desktop. So, to put it in perspective, to make it visual, let's pick a color and draw a box and call that box your Windows 10 machine. Windows 10 hardware. And on your Windows 10 hardware, what we're going to do today, there's really 3 ways to do this. Let's see, I'll choose some colors. Blue for the, that didn't switch. Blue for the MS store, and shall we call that native? That's what we're doing today. There's a lot of money and effort and time making sure that you take this path, and it is something of a pitfall. It's got some dangers for you to remain aware of. Okay, so another way to do this is slightly foreign, but not really so foreign, because it's still running on your native Windows 10 for all intents and purposes, and that is Anaconda. And the main reason for running Anaconda, for installing Anaconda, is to get something called Jupyter. But you know what? It's not always Jupyter. There are environments people are getting used to out there that hides the fact that there's the Jupyter engine involved. And a probably more popular term that's out there is notebooks. The notebooks concept really is what makes everything accessible for the noob and the beginner. So there's another part to the story, right? The foreign part, the part that comes from elsewhere, the part that's actually significantly better, in my opinion. And Microsoft is going to considerable lengths. Even though they went to those far lengths on this native version in blue up there, they've gone to even farther lengths on the Windows subsystem for Linux, and that's going to be, I'll put the Ubuntu under there. Windows subsystem for Linux. And you will always hear that referred to as WSL, and often more frequently these days with a 2 after it. And where your code is running there is, shall we say, Ubuntu. Chances are it's going to be Ubuntu. And whoops, Control Z, Control X, Control Z, bring that back. That was a mistake. I wanted Control Z to undo Ubuntu, because very often you're running it in a very server-like environment. And that implies that it's really running from the command line. It's very similar to native in the blue box. So I'm going to say a Linux shell, Ubuntu bash shell, Ubuntu bash. Yeah, there we go. Which is really that server environment that's used so often. And then there's more to the story, but this will be a future video. This is best. Let's choose a color for, highlighting stuff about what we're doing right here. This is for, it's not really the noob. The noob is over on the green. This is comp sci people, because you have your fresh notebook, you're in a situation much like what I'm doing right now, and you go to class, and this is this video. And the question is, how do you run Python? It took a long way to get to this. This is the punchline of all this. You go to here and you start typing COM and you get command prompt. And there's your little command prompt. Very familiar to Windows people. You can't even make your font bigger with Control+. We're going to be getting this command prompt out of the picture in not too long with a unified Windows terminal, but not on this video. On this video, we do what everyone is instructed to do in kind of the comp sci environment, which is to go to the command prompt, type Python, hit enter, and up pops the Microsoft Store. See? And it's Python 3.9. It's the very latest version. And I'll just go ahead and hit get on that. And if you remember, when I typed Python in the command prompt, it popped up the store. And it came back with a blinking cursor. This is part of the magic. This is part of the enormous extent that Microsoft has gone to make sure that without doing anything special, without doing anything extra or special like installing Anaconda or Windows Subsystem for Linux, that there's a good Python story, nonetheless, a good native, Microsoft native Python story. That's what you're seeing happening here. There's a little prompt that came up. I'm going to make sure there's not anything I actually need to answer before I move on. Nope, it's still just doing the install. You can see the little ellipsis blinking, blinking, blinking here. So it's not really a frozen screen. It said, did you want to run it? I still feel that there might be a hidden prompt that happened as I was flipping screens. So one thing you can do after that install is done, this will be an interesting little test. The next time you type Python in here, and there it is. This is just a busy wait. I'm showing, I guess, a bug in the Microsoft Store. I should be able to just close out of that now. But this is an interactive Python command prompt. If I were to go print hello, there's your hello world. See? Exit. Now you can't just type exit. It'll give you an error, or it'll tell you. It tells you use exit or Control Z plus return to exit. So EXIT with an open close parenthesis, it starts the Python story right away. If you're not familiar with it, exit is just a function. And typing the name of a function without the open close parenthesis is not actually calling the function. When you put the parenthesis around it, the function is called, the action is taken, and bam, you're back out to your commands prompt. So I would have liked to have made that font maybe a little bigger for a good demonstration here. But what we're going to do is do another kind of hello world, which isn't the interactive command prompt. It's worth making the font bigger, right? Properties. It's so small I can't even see the prompt. That's better. So again, typing just Python, and then the hello world program, exiting, back out to the prompt. We can clear that, CLR, no. CLS. Between DOS and Unix, the commands, you sometimes get a little bit mixed up. But what I'm going to do here is I am going to echo. First of all, the echo command is something that is bash shell type thing. So when you hear people talk about Unix or bash or Linux shell, it's what you can type right on the command prompt, but you put it into a file instead, and the file is executed. So if I were to make a file that contained echo hello, it would do the same thing. If you wanted to echo hello world, well, you've got this issue of, oh, it does it. So they've anticipated a lot of these cases on the command line, but more traditionally, you would put single or double quotes around it. Interestingly, it echoes it back with the double quotes around it, which makes me think to try with single quotes. It echoes the single quotes as well. Echo is not a Linux command. This is being used as a local DOS command, old school DOS. So the behavior I see might be a little different than the echo I'm familiar with on Linux. However, I should still be able to do command line redirection and echo to a file. Let's see, echo a print command. Now, if I have this right, I would do it like this. Print hello. And we do command line redirection to a file, and we're going to make a file called hello.py, right? You know, I'll call it test.py, so it's not too many hellos in the picture. And then I'm going to run test.py, right? So if I do a dir, well, you see the contents of that directory, but you'll see there's a file called test.py right there. I'm not giving anything away here because this is really a default Windows machine, and I haven't customized what's on the file system all that much yet. My serial number, okay. Well, anyway, I'm not that too paranoid about that. CLS. But now if I type Python and then say test.py, it should do the contents. Now you can see it didn't. So let me just go to that location. I created that right in my root home directory. So that is this PC. You'd think they'd make it easier just to get to the user directory by default. This is much the default I have set up. So I just happen to know you click in there, you click in users, and then you can find your home directory. And here's the test.py, and I will open with. And I'll just choose a notebook for now. Notepad, right? There's my hello world. And then I can quickly diagnose why that didn't work. It did, in fact, put the double quotes around print, making it a valid statement, but not having the effects that we want it to have. It was valid Python. It was just a statement sitting there with no, it's barely even a statement, just a value. So I get rid of the quotes around it. Oops, I got rid of the wrong thing. I bring up the command prompt again. But now I can type python test.py, and there is the hello world, right? The contents of that file is the Python command, and that is what happens when you run things in the native context. Now, what they're really trying to do with this native context is to get you to install VS Code. So this naturally leads you down the VS Code route. And golden handcuffs. I guess you want to draw handcuffs kind of open because they're about to get you. And some links. Golden handcuffs route. Click, click, and you are going to be a Microsoft person with all these subtle decisions for the rest of your, Python using career being made because you had not taken this next step to go this direction, which will be probably the next vid. And it's better for where this was comp sci people. This route will be true beginners. Or noobs. Now, if this route leads you to the golden handcuffs, this anaconda route leads you to the lost approach. You can automate, but you can only automate so long as you're sitting there pressing the run button on your notebook. It is semi-automation and doesn't bring you to this sort of golden panacea land up here, which is, you know, true automation, end-to-end server automation. And that's the full picture of where we're going with the 3 contexts of running Python. And I brought you all the way here on this first route, kind of up until, you know, where the next logical step is to install some sort of powerful editor, so you don't have to use Notepad to edit text files sitting on your local hard drive. But if you do, this is the hello world. Python space file name is how you run it under the old command prompt of DOS, and you know, the way you get to it. I can repeat that one last time just to show you what the file looks like in there. We go this PC. This is how you find your home directory. C, users, and I was pretty sure that at one point Microsoft just automatically left this location out in your quick links, but I guess knowing your home directory and going into this location is not something they're really encouraging so much for some reason, but it's an important location. And there's test.py. Open with Notepad. It has an option there. You can open it with Python. That's interesting. It's another context for running it. It's like a double click from the desktop. Let's see what happens. Console appears, shows hello world, and disappears. So there's really not much point there, except maybe in making things that really do run and have some desired effect. But what I wanted to do was to show you opening it with Notepad and maybe enlarge that a little. There is your Python hello world program. Open a text file, put that in it, save it, close the text file, go to a command prompt, type the word Python after having it installed it from the Microsoft Store, as you'll recall, which was a process that we went through, and the file name you just created, and you've done your Python hello world along the comp sci, the more comp sci-like path, the more native Microsoft path, and the path that brings you down to VS Code and the golden handcuffs and vendor dependency. So anyway, it's not bad. You ought to do it, at least for the experience, and I'll bring you to this more exciting place here on the next video. So thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again when we do this one, and don't forget to subscribe.